Welcome to Teaching Success with EDGE Levels A through C. My name is Nicole Bjornvik, and I'm the Senior National Training Manager for National Geographic Learning. I'll be your presenter for this session. EDGE is a core reading and language arts program designed to meet the language and literacy needs of both striving readers and English learners in grades 9 through 12. EDGE will help you prepare all students for college and career success with dynamic National Geographic content and authentic multicultural literature. EDGE addresses the 9 through 12 Common Core State Standards. Today we will be taking a thorough look at the program components and the instructional design of the program. Throughout the session, I'll also point out various elements of the research base behind it. EDGE provides high-interest, age-appropriate texts with built-in supports to provide access to students at a variety of reading levels. There are 4 levels of EDGE, each at different reading levels. The instructional texts in each student book are written at a Lexile level that allows the students to learn reading skills and strategies in an accessible text before applying those same strategies to on-level texts in the complex text column. Now let's see what resources you'll have to support your students. The EDGE student book is available in 3 formats. E-books, which can be downloaded onto a tablet and read anytime, even without internet access. E-editions, which are built into the MyNG Connect platform and provide audio recordings of the text, the ability to take notes, and the ability to highlight text, and of course the print version. There's also an interactive practice book for every level, as well as a separate grammar and writing practice book. The student website, MyNG Connect, includes various features such as selection recordings, the National Geographic Digital Library, and additional online resources. Students also have access to 2 different libraries for each level. The Level Library, which consists of 3 books per unit at 3 different reading levels, and the Complex Text Library, which is 1 book per unit, and this book is on high school reading level. For teachers, each level has 2 teachers' editions, volumes 1 and 2, as well as an annotated version of the practice books. For those of you using EDGE with English learners, there's also a complete language and grammar lab. The teacher website includes various resources like an online lesson planner, a digital presentation tool, and all of the resources you have available digitally. EDGE also includes a comprehensive assessment package for each level, and all of these assessments can be delivered online through our e-assessment process. Now let's take a look at the instructional path for each unit. I'm using Level B Unit 1 as an example, but rest assured all units in Levels A through C follow the same pattern. Each unit begins with a unit launch and a how to read lesson. Next, we move into the cluster instruction. Each unit contains 3 clusters. Within each cluster, there is a main reading selection and a companion selection. Unit workshops, workplace workshops, vocabulary workshops, and listening and speaking workshops are built in after clusters 1 and 2. At the end of the unit, there is a close reading selection where students can apply the reading skills and strategies to on-level complex texts. Every unit also includes a complete writing project that steps students through the writing process, focusing on a specific writing mode and trait for each project. And finally, the unit wrap-up gives students the opportunity to present their unit projects and reflect upon their own reading. We'll now take a closer look at each of the lessons. We begin with the unit launch. As you can see here, an essential question, in this case, what influences a person's choices, is listed along with a large National Geographic visual that relates directly to this essential question. Each unit launch also includes quotations to help provoke lively discussion. You may be asking yourself, what is an essential question? These are the engaging and enduring questions that we all face. They give students insight into questions central to their lives and make reading matter for them. Essential questions, or EQs, reflect the issues students face in their own lives, provide students with a motivating context for reading and learning, and promote rich discussions. You'll also notice that essential questions have no simple, easy answer, which allows students to become active participants in their own learning. In the first steps of the unit launch, students engage in and discuss the essential question and the quotations. And to help with the Common Core listening and speaking standards, directions for cooperative learning structures are included to help students develop listening and speaking skills. You will see that these activities are specific to the content found on the page, making it easy to implement them right away. Students then engage in and interpret the visual and apply some critical viewing strategies. Each unit launch visual is a National Geographic image that truly embodies the essential question. The next part of the unit launch provides an opportunity for students to engage in a debate related specifically to the essential question. This provides a great opportunity for students to work on their argumentation skills, which are a big part of the Common Core. Within each unit, students also have the opportunity to complete a unit project, which develops throughout the course of the unit, allowing students to come together and work as a team. These projects prepare students for the types of team-building, project-based tasks they will face in the real world after high school. They are also designed to engage students in a real-world way with the essential question, allow them to connect their out-of-school literacies with the skills they're learning in the unit. Also on this page, you'll find the opportunities for extended reading using the Edge library. These books are at a variety of reading levels and genres and are all tied to the unit theme and essential question. There is a complete student journal and teacher's guide available for each of these 3 titles for each unit. Following the unit launch, we introduce students to the genre that is the focus of the unit, as well as the reading strategy. A demo text helps us do this. The demo texts were created by one of the program authors, Michael W. Smith, to encapsulate the specific aspects of the genre at hand for each unit. In Unit 1, however, you will introduce all of the reading strategies that will be covered throughout the program first. This lesson provides students with an overview of which strategies they will be studying and learning throughout the program. In the teacher wrap of the Teacher's Edition, you'll see the differentiation opportunities that are built in throughout the program for English learners, but don't skip over these because they're often appropriate for many students who are struggling readers. In Unit 1 and moving forward, the How to Read lessons will teach students strategies to use when reading a specific type of selection. For example, here our unit will focus on short stories. This may also focus on nonfiction, drama, poetry, etc. They will be reading selections in each cluster that follow this genre of text. Now it's time to move on to the cluster instruction. Remember, there are 3 clusters per unit, and just like each unit, each cluster follows the same instructional path. The first step in each cluster is the Prepare to Read lesson, where we introduce students to the key vocabulary. Next is the Before Reading lesson for the main selection, where students are introduced to the literary element and the reading strategy they will be focusing on. Then it's time to read the main selection. Following the main selection, students engage in a second Before Reading lesson that prepares them for reading the adjunct selection. And at the end of each cluster, students deepen their understanding and extend their learning across the language arts through the Reflect and Assess and Integrate the Language Arts lessons. We'll now take a deeper look at each of these lessons. The Prepare to Read lessons are designed to activate prior knowledge and build background for the entire cluster, 2 areas where we know students need help with prior to reading. First, students engage in a group discussion relating to the essential question. This discussion focuses on a specific element of the essential question that connects to the upcoming reading selections. This is also where we introduce students to the key vocabulary for the cluster. Before we look at the systematic research-based routine that's used to teach the vocabulary, let's look at the key supports found on this page. Each word is highlighted throughout the text and includes the pronunciation, part of speech, and the page where the word first appears. To help students get a clear understanding of the word's meaning, student-friendly examples rather than dictionary-style definitions are provided, as well as strong visual supports when possible. And academic vocabulary is identified with a red dot throughout the program. When the EDGE authors were selecting which words would be the focus of the key vocabulary lessons, they selected the words that matter most. This means that all key vocabulary words are central to comprehending the text. Without knowing these words, the reading selection, its theme, main idea, or plot just won't make sense to those students. The key vocabulary words are also personally valuable to the students because they need these words in order to discuss the essential questions. And the words are high utility academic words that students will encounter in multiple subject areas and in life. Now that we know the type of words you will be teaching, let's take a look at the explicit, consistent, predictable routine that you will use to teach these words. Before students receive instruction in each word, it's important to have them rate themselves on their previous knowledge. They can do this by holding their fingers close to their chest to represent their comfort level with the word based on the rating scale listed on the slide. They can also use the interactive practice book pages to circle the numbers representing their comfort level. This is the first step in the routine. The next step is to guide students in correctly pronouncing the word by syllables and as a whole. Then it's time to explain the meaning of the word using the clear, student-friendly examples provided. In the fourth step, students elaborate word meanings by generating their own examples and through practice. And finally, students work with a partner to practice the words using the vocabulary study cards they have created. You may find that some of your students know some of these words more than others. The words that they have trouble with would be the words that you would want to focus on. Now that we've taken a detailed look at the Prepare to Read lesson, it's time to move on to the Before Reading lesson for the main selection. The goal of this lesson is to provide highly scaffolded instruction in literary elements and the reading strategy. The lesson begins by using the text to teach the text. This productive approach helps struggling readers become engaged. In the bottom half of the page, you'll find instruction on the reading strategy. In this selection, students focus specifically on making and confirming predictions as they read. Look at the explicit examples of the strategic ways readers can make and confirm predictions for themselves. This highly supportive, explicit instruction in both the genre and the comprehension strategy before the students read prepares them for success with the upcoming selection. Now it's time to build background, teach and practice the reading strategies, and have the students apply what they've learned as they read the main selection. Now it's your turn. Pause the session and take a few moments to explore the reading selections in this cluster. As you explore, you will see that literature selection pages have been designed to resemble the mainstream literature series to help prepare students for that expectation, as well as to make them feel comfortable using a book that is different from that of their peers. Also, take note of the following: the on-page vocabulary and comprehension support, the chunking of the text, the reading support, the analyze visuals, and the critical viewing opportunities. When you've completed your exploration, resume the session. Now that you've had a chance to explore the instruction for reading the selection, let's look at some examples of how to use and execute this instruction in your classroom. We'll start on the opening page of the selection. On day 1, as a whole group, begin by building background for the selection, analyzing the visual, and discussing the critical viewing question. These steps help prepare students for success in reading and comprehending the selection. This is when you could break your students up into small groups. While some are listening to the selection on MyNG Connect, others could be buddy reading or reading the selection independently. Group your students based on their reading levels. Giving them this opportunity to read or listen to the selection without interruption allows them to get familiar with the text before the focus on reading strategy begins. And don't worry, this is not the only time students will read the selection. When you first start using EDGE, teach your students how to use all of the on-page supports they have access to right there in their student books. The key vocabulary is always highlighted within the text, and a brief definition is provided right there so they don't have to flip through the book and get distracted. Some words or phrases are in bold text, which means they can be found here in Other Words, which is an on-page glossary for idioms and difficult words. Students will also see questions that provide metacognitive prompts so they can immediately apply the reading strategy. The gray numbered boxes tell them exactly when they should ask themselves these questions. And finally, there are frequent opportunities to monitor comprehension as they read. As you move through the units of EDGE, take time to review these supports every once in a while just to make sure your students are using them to support their reading. During small group instruction on day 2, let's say you have 2 different levels of students. This is when you begin the interactive reading of the selection. That means you'll provide a specific amount of time for the students to read a specific section or chunk of the text on their own, and then provide the reading support found in the teacher wrap to make sure they are applying the reading strategy appropriately. As you can see here, this differentiated instruction box provides you with some specific strategies for each group of students. Have you ever worked with a book where you had to spend your own time determining where the best place to stop would be? Well, one of the great things about EDGE is that each of the selections is already chunked for you, and it's very obvious to see when each chunk begins. The gray shaded strips here at the top of the page. In each fiction selection within EDGE, you'll have something like this that asks the students to set a purpose, preview, or predict before they read the following chunk. Each chunk will end with a monitor comprehension reminder for students. For nonfiction selections, chunks are determined using section headings like students have previously seen in their content area texts. Now, while you're reading the selection with your first group, your other students are working with a partner or independently on a variety of tasks. A few of them may work as a group on one of the vocabulary routines, creating and using their vocabulary study cards, and a few could be practicing their expression using the fluency routine. Another group can begin work on their unit project, and one student might decide to read their EDGE library book and work in the student journal. Students can also be working on their unit project during this time. And if anyone finishes what they're working on before you're ready for them, post an interactive practice book assignment on the board. If they don't finish it in class, they already know what they have for homework. Once one group finishes the interactive reading for the chunk you're working with, switch groups. In order to make this run smoothly, spend a lot of time at the beginning of the year teaching your students the classroom routines and procedures they'll use throughout the year. This is the key in successful differentiated instruction. On day 3, you may want to do another whole group review of the reading and an introduction of the grammar focus for the cluster. In a small group, continue the interactive reading with the chunk, and if necessary, provide more detailed instruction for the grammar lesson. The students who aren't working with you are working in pairs, groups, or independently on the routines, unit project, writing project, EDGE library, or interactive practice book pages that you've assigned previously. However, today they should be working on something they did not do the previous day. Basically, they rotate each day so that everyone completes all activities. This pattern would continue until everyone is finished with the interactive reading of the selection. The amount of time it will take depends on the length of the selection and the amount of time you have with your students. Okay, so I just mentioned grammar, so let's take a deeper look at the daily grammar instruction, which helps you model and guide students through each grammar topic using the grammar transparencies found on MyNG Connect. Within each cluster, there will be one grammar focus that is developed in the context of the selections and systematically builds oral and written skills. For example, in all 3 EDGE levels, the first grammar skill focus is on sentences. For each grammar focus, there will be 5 different grammar lessons that gradually develop that skill. As you move through the selections, you'll see the grammar skills path at the bottom of the Teacher's Edition page. The red arrow indicates which step you are on. Right next to the grammar skills path, you will see a facsimile of the grammar transparency with the answers that is used for that lesson. You'll also see built-in instruction for that transparency, which begins with the teacher modeling the grammar skill and how it works using the top portion of the transparency, which you're projecting on your whiteboard. Then students receive guided practice using the try it portion of that same transparency. Finally, students practice what they've learned on their own in their grammar and writing practice book. Within the grammar skills path, you may have noticed the ELL icons, and that's a reference to the Language and Grammar Lab. If you will be using Language and Grammar Lab, you'll find more detailed step-by-step lesson plans available for each grammar transparency in the Language and Grammar Lab Teachers Edition. Remember, we first used the Language and Grammar Lab during the Prepare to Read lesson to teach English learners a language function. Within the Language and Grammar Lab Teachers Edition, some grammar skills may lend themselves to potential language transfer issues. Some students who speak certain languages may have trouble transferring these grammar skills. If applicable, a language transfer transparency will be referenced, and the instruction for that transparency will be found in the back of the Language and Grammar Lab Teachers Edition, which also includes a detailed description of the language transfer issues. Remember, the grammar skills path for the cluster extends through both the main selection and the adjunct selection. The great thing is, all of the grammar lessons follow the same instructional path. So with this new thought in mind of breaking your students into whole and small group instruction, it's time to think about EDGE in that flexible classroom structure. When I say flexible classroom, I'm referring to the idea that all of your students may not be working at the same level, which means you may have to add some flexibility to your class routine. This means that while you may work with the entire class for some of your instruction, you may also need to spend some additional time with a small group of students who need extra support. Let's see how EDGE fits this model. Some of the lessons you see listed here work best in a whole group setting, including the unit launch, the how to read lessons, and the prepare to read lessons. When students are working with a partner or a small group, they can work on a unit project, the unit workshops, and other resources. And while working independently, students have additional options such as working with MyNG Connect and the Comprehension Coach, as well as always reading their EDGE level library book. Finally, at the end of reading the selection, it's time for students to apply their knowledge by analyzing that selection. In this lesson, students answer questions about the selection, vocabulary, literary element, and reading strategy. Working with the students in a whole group as they analyze what they've read will help them solidify their learning. Students are asked to return to the text to reread and write on demand. They also have the opportunity to review the selection and their learning in the interactive practice book. Now it's time to move on to the adjunct selection, which has its own before reading lesson because students will be working with a different genre, and therefore they will focus on a new literary element and another element of the overarching reading strategy. Instruction for the adjunct selection follows the same pattern we just saw in the main selection. However, after students have read the adjunct selection, they have the opportunity to directly interact with the text in their interactive practice book. As you can see, the interactive practice book includes a full color copy of the selection where they can reread and mark the selection to apply their knowledge and practice the reading strategy. The interactive practice book provides students with frequent opportunities to interact with the text and prompts active reading. Clear student instructions are built right into the page to help students focus on a specific reading purpose. At the end of the adjunct selection, you'll also see a reminder to conduct a unit project progress check with your group of students. This reminder is found at the bottom of the Teacher's Edition page and helps both you and your students stay on track for completing the project if you choose to do so. Every cluster ends with a reflect and assess lesson. In this lesson, students compare across texts with the main and adjunct selection they read in this cluster and relate them to the essential question. They also review vocabulary, develop reading fluency with one of the selections, and write in response to literature. The Integrate the Language Arts lessons provide additional opportunities to address and develop skills critical to student success across the areas of language arts, reading, writing, listening, and speaking. These lessons can be done as a review before giving the cluster test or as an additional opportunity for reteaching if necessary. These lessons have been designed to provide additional practice with the Common Core standards. After the first and second cluster in each unit, students will engage in 1 or 2 workshops. The Workplace Workshop promotes out-of-school literacy by having students research various jobs that may interest them. A few examples include a medical laboratory, a restaurant, a law office, and a veterinary clinic. The vocabulary workshop provides an additional focus on the vocabulary skill students are working with throughout the cluster, like context clues or making word connections. And the listening and speaking workshop provides an additional focus on authentic listening and speaking opportunities, such as conducting interviews, participating in a panel discussion, delivering a dramatic reading, and practicing in a debate. These workshops provide another great opportunity for students to work together in small groups, and they can easily be added to your online lesson plans. Now, at the end of each unit, close readings are included in the student book and in the interactive practice book to provide opportunities for more direct access to reading and rereading of complex on-grade level texts. Students will engage with you in a consistent routine that involves multiple readings and deep analysis of the text evidence, word choice, language, and meaning in the selection. Interactive versions of these texts are available for annotation to support the instructional goals, and those will be found in the interactive practice book. This routine can be found on page PD 55 in the front of any of your teacher's editions. And the routine itself is built into the teacher's edition with specifics for the selection provided. At the end of each unit, you'll also find a writing project. Just because this project is placed at the end of the unit, it doesn't mean you'll be waiting till the end of the unit to start. When you use the online lesson planner, the writing project will begin after you complete the first cluster of instruction. Take a look at the writing project overview page. Each project will focus on one writing mode, such as a personal narrative, short story, or a reflective essay. Notice on the writing project overview page there is a detailed description about the type of paper students will be writing. Having a chart like this with this description posted somewhere in the room can help students keep focused on what is expected of them. Each project will also focus on one of the traits of good writing. On this project overview page, you'll always see the teacher rubric for the scoring of traits of good writing, and the appropriate trait will be highlighted. And every project takes students through each step of the writing process by providing a step-by-step scaffolded instruction. Before students begin writing their own pieces, they have the opportunity to connect the writing to their lives. This section of the project is designed to help students recognize that many of the abilities required by writing are ones they demonstrate in their own everyday lives. Students then work through the full writing process: pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing and proofreading, and publishing and presenting. Before we move on to the unit wrap-up, I just want to reiterate that the writing project is not the only writing students perform in EDGE. At the end of each selection, students return to the text and reread and write as they analyze the text. At the end of each cluster, students write about literature as part of the Reflect and Assess lesson. In the Integrate the Language Arts lesson, at the end of each cluster, students complete a writing assignment using all steps of the writing process. And throughout the units, students have additional writing opportunities in content area connections, which are found in the teacher wrap. Students also write in relation to that close reading selection we just discussed. The unit wrap-up gives students an opportunity to present their completed unit projects to you and the class. They are also asked to evaluate all class projects, including their own, using the Unit Project Evaluation rubric found on the Learn MyNG Connect. Next, students reflect on their reading that they've done throughout the unit. This includes all of the selections and the EDGE library book they selected. Students can work with a partner or small group to discuss how the genre focus and the reading strategy related to their readings. And finally, it's time to revisit the essential question and bring everything together. In the teacher wrap, you'll also see a cumulative vocabulary review that you can use with students before they take their unit tests. When it comes to assessing your students, you can easily see which skills are assessed, beginning on the instructional focus page at the beginning of the unit. Using this key here at the bottom of the page, you can see what types of skills are being tested. The red T's are skills tested on the cluster and/or reading and literary analysis test at the end of each unit. The blue T's are tested on the unit writing and grammar test. The green T's are tested, or aqua, are tested on the language acquisition assessment, and the purple T's are assessed with a rubric. You can also find the T's in your objectives boxes for each individual lesson. Here is a quick look at all of the assessment tools available in EDGE, and except for the placement and gains test, everything is available right there in your assessment handbook and online on MyNG Connect. To learn more about our assessments, please view the EDGE Assessments On Demand module. Thank you for viewing this session. Please be sure to download your certificate of completion and check back soon for your next module.